All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town of Delafield Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. If you'd all rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Administrator, the roll call, please.
Chairman Troy.
Present.
Supervisors Dianasopoulos.
Present.
Kranik.
Present.
And Michaels.
Present.
Supervisor Wolfley is excused.
All right, citizen comments. There are public comments from citizens regarding items that are or are not on the agenda. It's not a discussion, it's a comment section. Individual presenters are limited to 3 minutes, and the presenters are required to follow the rules set forth in section 2.04 sub 1 sub D of the town code. Is there anybody who'd like to speak regarding anything?
Do I speak just prior to item 9 or now?
We'll probably call you up to speak if necessary when the agenda item comes up. Unless you'd like to speak now, you can speak. You go right ahead.
Good evening. I'm John Spiris, talking about the early start permit for the retreat subdivision. So I'm here requesting it as this is allowed in the developer's agreement under section 9, risk of proceeding with improvements prior to approvals. We have proceeded with other developments like this in the town of Oconomowoc and town of Merton, where we most recently did subdivisions. And if you ever want to check, you can check with the towns. We always fulfill our obligations there. The reason for the early start request is that the county requires that the soil should be stabilized by September 15th. And we may be able to get an extension to October 15th, weather permitting. So that is very important for this time of year. And the county really scrutinizes the stormwater and the stormwater drainage. So that's the reason for our request tonight. The owners have lived in the town for 32 years. They want this done properly as they live on the property. They have signed the loan documents with the bank for the letter of credit for the county. I just gave a draft to Tim Barbeau because there's a county bond required of $60,000 plus the town's bond. The total improvement costs are about, well, exactly $889,464 times 110%, so it's $978,410. So I've given the breakdown to Tim also. And the developer's agreement has already been approved by the Paquettes, and they have signed it, and then I've given that to Tim. Therefore, I'm asking for approval tonight so we can proceed and try to beat the weather. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else here to speak regarding any item either on or not on the agenda? Then I'll close the citizen comment section and we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the July 27th, 2021 town board minutes. Any comments or corrections, or if not, we'll accept the motion.
Motion to approve as presented by the clerk. Second.
I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by the clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 6, action on vouchers submitted for payment. There are no adjustments to the budget, so we'll go to accounts payable and payroll.
I will make a motion to approve payments for checks number 64916 through 64917 and checks number 64921 through 64942 in the amount of $99,249.07. And for payroll, a motion to approve the payrolls dated August 6, 2021 in the amount of $14,039.86.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve accounts payable and payroll as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving to communications. Mr. Green, item 7A, waste hauler services, Waukesha County, RFP process.
Sure. So I just received an email this evening from the county They said our RFP will be released next week, and then the final scores to the municipalities will be in early October. She thinks that is enough time for the town to initiate our contracts in time for budget. So hopefully we can get a final price tag and then put it on the budget for November. We won't be, they won't be included in our budget discussions in September, unfortunately.
Aren't all negotiations handled at the county level?
The town's gonna have to approve the final contract.
Sure, but,
Yeah, as far as the scoring and that goes, it'll be myself, and then the county will be reviewing it.
yeah, okay. Have complaints softened, or are we getting as many complaints as we
I
want?
haven't had as many, no,
Oh, that's nice.
but I have seen some posts on Nextdoor that tell me otherwise, so.
Okay. Any questions for Dan? Then we'll move on to item 7B, redistricting update.
So I met with the county last week, and they walked all the clerks through their GIS software and how the redistricting process is going to go. They're waiting on the final numbers from the census. I sent you guys preliminary numbers today, so hopefully those will be finalized soon, so we can go through and make any adjustments we need to. Given that we don't have any aldermanic districts, it should be relatively straightforward. We just have to keep our populations between 300 and 1,000 in our wards, which I think we will meet. So we may not have to make any adjustments at all, hopefully. So I'll keep you guys posted once that goes live and we can make corrections.
Okay, they're just line adjustments on a map,
Yeah,
if we even have to make them. Yeah,
correct.
okay. Any questions for Mr. Green? Okay, we'll move on to, I actually asked this to be put on the agenda. That's the reason for the amended agenda. Steve Michaels is the town's liaison and appointee onto the Lake Country Fire and Rescue Fire Department. And I asked him to give us an update.
Yeah, thank you. Last Thursday, the Lake Country Fire Board, which has 2 representatives from each municipality involved in Lake Country Fire, met for the first annual budget workshop. So the memo that's included in the packet this evening is the first draft of the budget that was presented by the chief. We took a couple hours, and he went through in pretty good detail, line by line. As a board, we sort of absorbed what he said, and we have a meeting next Thursday to continue the discussion and see where it goes. The two things that have happened over the last few months that precede the budget. First is we had a series of meetings dealing with an employment dispute at the at the fire department. The end resolution was a severance agreement with an employee that agreed to resign rather than go through the fire commission firing process. The board did recommend the termination of the employee for violating the ethics handbook. It was a dispute that just involved violent language at the workplace. It was nothing monetary or nothing that involved lack of service or present any harm to the public. It was just some unwanted comments that people felt threatened by. So that employee's resigned, so the budget reflects an increase in the legal budget as a result of that matter, and the budget reflects having that employee be paid into 2022 till about February as part of the severance agreement. The other thing that has preceded the budget has been there's a unionization vote ongoing right now at the Lake Country Fire Department. We don't know what the status is. They filed papers with the state to vote for a unionization activity. Ballots have been mailed to those eligible to vote. It's only the full-time staff that are eligible to vote, and those ballots are still out. So the process goes that they're out for another couple weeks. They'll be mailed in and counted, and then we'll know what the result is. As far as the budget goes, the chief presented a budget with the recommendation that the maximum allowed amount of levy increase be taken on both the operating and the capital budget. The maximum amount allowed by the intermunicipal agreement is the CPI plus 2%. So CPI is coming in at about 3.14%, which is actually, it's a 12-month rolling average. It's actually probably a little lower than what it may be next year, but it's 3.14, and then it'll be 2% on top of that. According to the chief's budget here, and we have a lot of follow-ups we're asking of him, but the preliminary numbers showed that to keep the lights on, or to remain operational as it is, and to give the staff a 3% raise, there would be a 3.48% increase. So that reflects insurance increases and other things of that nature from an operational standpoint. The other 2% that he's recommending that the municipalities adopt would come in adding 3 additional full-time staff. His proposal is to hire them in July, so the net effect is 1.5 additional full-time staff for this upcoming year. He does not think that the department is necessarily understaffed. What he would like to do is they currently have 11 full-time people on staff, 11 people on every shift. And what he would like to do is not raise the minimum number of people on a shift, but have a 12th person. What he describes is what happens is if you have somebody that has an injury or a sickness or some sort of a COVID miss or anything of that nature, they're at 11 staff. That's the minimum staff that they can have on a shift. So then somebody gets put into a forced overtime, stays on, or gets called in. So what he would like to do is provide cushion to the department where limiting overtime by having 12 people be the amount of people on staff, but 11 still be the minimum required. So if somebody were to be sick, if somebody were to be injured, you wouldn't necessarily have to pull somebody to stay on or to have overtime.
What was the reaction of the municipalities and the board to this budget?
I expressed concern about the 5%. That's a large raise. The city of Delafield also expressed 5% hesitation regarding the 5%. And as did the board president, who's from Neshota. It's a lot to ask. The capital budget, also he requests 5%. The main driver there is some rusting that's going on in the fire ladder. It was originally stated for a 2025 replacement, which would have allowed us to save money to replace it. Because of the rusting that's going on, he's recommended moving that up to 2023 because of the lead times required for ordering ladder trucks of this size. That means we would need to make some sort of a down payment in 2022 to order it. So.
Okay, any questions for Supervisor Michaels? Any comments?
What is the process then? You said meeting coming up.
So we have another budget workshop meeting next Thursday, and then one scheduled for the end of month as well. At some point, the Lake Country Fire Board will take a vote to recommend of some nature that the budget be forwarded to the municipalities, and then the municipalities all have an opportunity to vote and adopt on it. There's lots of procedures as to what happens if the board doesn't forward it or if one municipality doesn't forward it. I think the rough shot is that if it doesn't get approved across the board, it will remain where it is and remain stagnant. But it ultimately will come to this body to take a vote to approve Lake Country Fire's budget. Any feedback you have now would be awesome. I mean, I can take it back to the Lake Country Fire Board and say, hey, this is what their gut was off the initial review. This is what I heard, and, we should try and craft something in response to that. We pushed back on the 5%, and we said, this is hefty. Why are we going to the max? This is year one for the town of Delafield, and you've already taken us to the max that you can. It doesn't feel great. the chief's reaction, and he will come and explain all this. I'm not going to speak for him, but he pointed to the first line of the operating budget highlights and said, with a 3% raise, for us to maintain operations, it's 3.48%. So that's over 3%. That's what the stay as it is budget, assuming that a raise would be given. We dug quite a bit into the details of what does it mean to give a 3% raise. I think roughly a 1% raise to the staff equates to about $16,000 total dollars. So if you drop it to 2.5%, if you start looking at that as a place to save money, it doesn't get you very far.
Including the pension.
I don't know what that math is.
Okay.
That might just be the annualized number, but
It seems low. But I don't know. It just seems low. 1% of their total payroll is $16,000. It just seems low. You have any comments, Mr. Kranek?
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate this coming forward. Supervisor Michael's keeping us informed of what's happening, but there's still a lot of hoops and a lot of, the board's still got to take their crack at it too. So, I mean, I don't foresee, hopefully this coming back with, the 5 point, that's pretty steep increase.
What do you mean a board? What board?
The fire board.
Oh, the fire board, yeah.
I mean, the
Okay.
fire board just saw this last week, so I mean, this is how it works there over at Lake Country. They come out and then the board does their work, and then hopefully they get to something reasonable, because as I recall, if one municipality vetoes it, it doesn't pass. So,
That's correct.
So everybody has to, agree on this thing. So I think, hopefully Steve and our other representative can take back the feedback that, hey, this is a pretty steep increase, and it's not how this thing was sold to us. So it's kind of a little difficult to swallow at this point, but without knowing all the details, that's pretty much all I can comment on at this point.
No, I would agree. This is not how it was sold to us back in less than 10 months ago. We were given assurances that the increases would be around 3%, and that the ladder truck didn't have to be replaced until 2025. It just seems like a lot of changes in consultants have gone contrary to what was presented to the board. But it's a great update.
if you guys have any questions, yeah, I mean, we'll plan to put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, obviously, and keep discussing, so.
Just one last question. On the unionization action, you're saying that they're in the process of voting on unionizing now, and they could be decided by the fall?
Yes, that's correct.
That
The membership needs to take a vote, and the outcome of that vote will determine how the process unfolds. If they agree to unionize, then the for lack of a better term, the negotiation will begin as to what the employment contract with those employees looks like.
Okay,
So that could essentially affect this budget
Correct.
absolutely.
dramatically.
I don't know if dramatically is the right word.
It won't go down.
It could take 3 years for the board to reach any sort of a workplace or salary agreement with the union. Our attorneys advise that that is normal. I mean, 18 months to 3 years until that agreement's in place. I don't know what the technical interim looks like as to what the operation would be operating under, but will it substantially affect this? Based off of him saying it takes 3 years for us to negotiate that contract, I think my answer is no. I advocated in our last meeting, I said, frankly, the legal operating costs in here is not high enough. We've gone from $1,000 to $10,000. We're going to blow that out of the water. One, because of employment investigations that we've had, and two, for anything involving the unionization activity, it's going to be a very involved process. So I asked the chief to, find money to make sure that that is appropriately covered, and whether that comes from somewhere in the 3% pay increase or something like that, I don't know. But it's certainly a place that you could look to find more legal budget.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was a nice update. If we're concluded, we'll move on to new business. Item 9A, discussion and possible action on the adoption of Ordinance 2021-06, an ordinance to repeal and recreate portions of Chapter 19 of the town.
Skip Mr. Cyrus, I think.
Oh, we're going to go down to
9A.
9A. I was on the old agenda.
Okay.
We went out of order here. Okay. Yes, okay, 9A, discussion and possible action on the request from John Sears for an early start approval for the retreat subdivision. Tim?
All right, this subdivision is the one that's located east of County Highway G off of Norms Road. It's a seven lot subdivision with one existing lot that's there presently. They have provided the documents that Mr. Spears indicated. We have a signed developers agreement. We have a final plat that's been submitted that will go to the plan. That's currently in review from the state, the county, and all the other reviewing agencies, and it'll come to the Town Plan Commission as well as the board eventually. We also have a letter of credit that's in draft form but ready to go as soon as the banker signs it. In the amount that I've reviewed and approved. The reason for this is for them to get started now so that they can actually get the work done this fall and try to get streets in before, and get it restored before the fall comes, too late, and we end up with a unfinished subdivision out there. This is a little bit unique. Typically, the process is they have the preliminary plats approved, and that's been approved quite a while ago. And then the developer's agreement and the letter of credit comes to the board. Those get approved, and then after that's done, then they proceed with the construction. The section 9 that Mr. Spears referred to is really, there's a risk of them starting all the work, any of the work, prior to the final plat being approved, technically. That's what that section really discusses. That he's at risk that we're not going to approve the plat. However, state law requires that if the final plat is in conformance with the preliminary plat, which it is, then we have an obligation to approve that plat. We cannot deny it. And so it's a matter of incorporating all the comments from the preliminary plat into that. So our process is a little bit different, and it's really dealing with a time issue here. We're already into August. They want to get the roads going, and I think staff's recommendation is to allow this to happen. However, that letter of credit should be in place officially. And once again, we just need to get the bank to actually sign it. I have a draft that's not signed yet, but a draft that's signed, that should be in place so that at least we have the financial guarantee in case something happens. Who knows what could happen, but if you lived through the 80s, a lot of developers went under, and communities were stuck with half of subdivisions and unfinished properties and things like that. So anyway, I think we're comfortable if we have the developer's agreement, the financial guarantee, and then the developer agreement will be in place coming up in the next month, along with the final plat.
The final plat or the preliminary plat?
The final plat. The preliminary is already done and approved through the Plan Commission and Board.
Okay.
And then once they get that done, then usually they prepare the plans for my review, and that's what they've been doing.
So you believe the risk to the town is manageable?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
With the caveat that we get that letter of credit, so.
Okay.
And we have a signed developer's agreement, so in essence, they have agreed to the document that staff as well as our attorney has reviewed. It's really their form, so they have reviewed it as well. So I don't anticipate having an issue. And Mr. Spears has developed a number of subdivisions in the town and has followed through on all of them without any issues.
Any comments from the board?
What's the turnaround time to get that final letter of credit in place to the banker signing it? I mean, this week?
It's a draft.
Well-
We're just waiting for the sign.
My understanding is you want to start on Thursday.
Yeah, we have to still give the letter of credit to the county, so it's the county and your letter of credit.
Right.
So
But
whatever that's done.
We don't want you to start until Dan gets that final letter of credit. So that's the only caveat that I would say. We don't want to draft.
So if
want
we
the-
approve this, the caveat is Dan has that final letter of credit in his possession.
You got it.
We agree.
Okay.
But they do want to start, I believe, Thursday. Is
No,
what they-
If we don't have a letter of credit by then, we won't start.
And the weather cooperates.
No, I think I appreciate their, wanting to get started and wanting to get that soil stabilized, because I know that we've had instances in the past where that soil hasn't been stabilized, and we've had issues that have gone on for a while. We appreciate getting that soil stabilized, because it makes everybody's life a lot easier.
We've made that very clear. We had a pre-construction meeting last week. We've made that very clear, as well as in the developer's agreement and all the plans. So we've kind of made sure that things like that are taken care of.
Especially
We've
with-
learned our lesson, I would say.
No, I appreciate that, so. Staff is comfortable with this, I'm comfortable with this. I'll make a motion to approve the early start for the retreat subdivision for John Spheris, contingent that that they can't start until that final letter of credit is in the possession of Administrator Dan Green's hands.
I'll second.
Okay, I agree with that. Okay, then I have a motion and a second for a contingent, motion to approve an early start. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sir, you have your early start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Discussion possible action on the adoption of ordinance 2021-06, an ordinance to repeal and recreate portions of chapter 19 of the town code concerning regulations of parks.
So this is back in front of you. We had some issues with the water portion of this, or the lake regulations. Myself and the attorney discovered, I think around the same time that in chapter 21, it actually addresses all of those lake issues, so that chapter 21 does match closely, not exactly, to what the village and the city of Pewaukee have. So the changes in front of you today are just the changes that we had discussed the last time we brought this forward. Just removing some of the language regarding the Parks Commission or Committee, making some changes to the dog policies in the town, adding some language to drones, replacing with either the committee with town board or town staff. And then we did make one change regarding the park hours, changing it to 9 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. We thought that was a little late. But with a recommendation from the sheriff, they thought instead of sundown, just change it to 9. That seems a little more reasonable, so we did that as well. So it's in front of you, and the DNR is currently reviewing changes to Chapter 21 and to the lake regulations in this ordinance. Once they review it and approve it, we'll have to set a public hearing 30 days in advance of the public hearing to make changes to Chapter 21 and then to remove the lake regulations that are duplicated in Chapter 19. So that will be coming in the next 60 days.
I have a few questions. Since Lapham Peak is in the town, and I realize that these are town-owned parks, do we need to state that at all? Because I know in D, it says, park includes the grounds under the control or jurisdiction of what was the commission. Do we need to state that in here at all, so that people realize that this does not apply to Lapham Peak?
We could add language to that, just something stating that this ordinance is to all town-owned property, something like that, so.
Has there ever been any confusion as to what rules govern Lapham Peak? to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no, but
I don't, you know, I don't know, I just thought of that, because I thought, I mean, since Lapham is in the town, and
we can run it by both Waukesha County and our attorney. I get your point that there are some trails that are town trails, but then they lead into county lands, so
Mhm.
there is a distinction there. Let me do some
Yeah.
digging, but
And, Dan, what type of, under 19.015, what type of equipment might potentially be leased? I didn't quite understand that.
For recreational purposes.
Leasing of equipment.
Could be for, maintaining the baseball diamonds or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Could be, if there's ever a fundraiser and you lease an inflatable something, could be open to a lot of things.
My only other comment seems in the, regarding the lakes. Clearly, this is a bit dated in that it only refers to water skiing and, in some of the areas like kayaks and SUPs are not listed as potential crafts that you can't be within so many feet of. Are they intending to add that to that portion that?
Are you in chapter 19 you're referring
Yeah.
to?
Mhm.
That whole section regarding the lake is going to be removed at the next ordinance. So we have a separate ordinance relating to the lakes portion. But we have to make those changes in 19 and 21 together. So anything referencing lake regulations will be removed from this ordinance. And that's covered in chapter 21.
And are those updated to
Well,
current,
the
thing?
water, when we have a lake, all the municipalities that share border with that lake have to have the same exact ordinance.
Okay.
So in order to change that, we have to have a combined all three municipalities have a public hearing. So when we do updates to 21, we'll have to do them combined with the village and the city. So I can talk to Officer Tellwater and see if he hasn't, if he wants to update it or if he feels there's a need to.
Okay.
But
It-
we,
You
go
can
ahead.
tell the language is a good 20 years old, just from the items that are missing that I have certainly are well used now that weren't at that time.
yeah, and in 19, they probably are outdated. In chapter 21
mine,
was done
hopefully.
in, I think, 2013 or
Oh,
2014.
okay.
It was when all municipalities created
Okay.
the same ordinance. For some reason, ours is missing a couple things, so we have to change those.
Okay.
A lot of the language is outdated. That's why we're going through all the ordinances and
Mhm.
trying to update them.
Yeah, this is- Otherwise, it looks great.
Any other comments, suggestions?
Has anyone heard pushback or thoughts on 9 o'clock as a close time?
I haven't heard anything, no.
It seems reasonable to me.
And Lapham Peak also closes at 9 p.m., so we'd be consistent with the state parks.
Great.
Do you want us to approve this now, or do you want to wait until you have the other improvements in 60 days?
This is a separate ordinance, so that's actually going to be it's already a drafted ordinance. We're waiting to hear back from the DNR, so
I would think we should
like to
approve
take
this
action
now.
now, yeah.
Take action on this now, contingent upon Dan adding whatever language the DNR feels and the county feels is necessary for the Lapham Peak issue.
Yep.
And just get it behind us. Chapter 21 is a whole different subject.
So I see we're banning drones and other stuff, because I don't think we have any authorized spots for that in our town parks at this time.
Correct, yeah, I think that was a concern that was brought up when this first came about. And I actually pulled it from another municipality, so it's not uncommon that they do, but I also don't know the traffic patterns in the area because a lot of areas don't allow drones in certain areas. I don't know what the town of Delafield is.
The city?
The city didn't have it in their ordinance.
Oh.
So.
That's a big change we're gonna have to communicate to folks, because I know that there's a handful of folks that fly their drones at the park next to me, so. And then, how do we define what a footpath is under bicycles? Like, is the trail at North Shore Park a footpath, or is that like a multi-use recreational path?
What section are you in?
I'm looking
24.
at 24 about the bicycles, because technically, reading this, you're not supposed to ride your bikes on that path. And I know the kids ride their bikes on that path to get to school. So I just want to make sure that we don't create an unintended consequences if we pass this.
Well, that hasn't changed. That was.
Well, I know that hasn't changed, but I'm just,
Okay.
as I'm looking through this, just, you know.
How wide is that path?
10 feet.
Oh.
8 feet?
I would say it's 8 to 10.
You're talking about the one in the park?
Yeah, the one in the park.
I think that's 8 feet.
Yeah, it's 8 feet.
Yeah, 'cause it's-
That's typically the minimum for a multi-use path.
Okay. Well, I just,
So it could be used as a multi-use path, but maybe it's more of a policy decision if we don't want any bikes on that.
When I would consider a foot trail something that isn't paved either. I would
Yeah.
consider
Okay.
that something maybe like what Lapan Peak would have.
I wouldn't have a problem with kids riding bikes on that path, on that paved path.
no, I don't have a problem with it either. I just don't want to, you know, some grumpy person to say, hey, it's in the town code, and then we start getting letters.
It's gonna happen.
Which will happen, yeah.
Well, speaking of getting letters, I mean, are there people that use drones, and are we okay with them using them?
Well, I just, you know,
I was unaware of any activity. Is there a way that they could have it be an authorized activity, or?
I don't know if you want a drone on public land. You can use a drone on your own property, but using drones, what if I'm using the park with my wife and kids and grandkids, and I don't want someone flying a drone over me and taking pictures of me from up in the air? Now, my neighbor flies them on his property, but I can't stop that.
Depending on the drone too, it could be a safety risk.
Yeah, I have no strong feeling about it.
What was, I'm assuming that language was from the advice of the town attorney, is that correct?
The attorneys who reviewed this, he didn't make any changes to my modifications, so. We could add language like unless otherwise approved by staff or something like that.
well, if it becomes a problem, we'll just have to revisit it, so.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the ordinance to repeal and recreate portions of Chapter 19 of the Town of Delafield Town Code concerning the regulations of the parks.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the new ordinance for Chapter 19 concerning regulation of parks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 9B, discussion and possible action on the adoption of ordinance 2021-07, an ordinance granting limited expenditure contracting and contract execution authority to the town administrator, clerk, treasurer, and town chair. Again, this was discussed at a previous meeting, and the proposal is just to streamline operations. And there's I believe it's $25,000 maximum.
How often does something like this come up, and are you able to like give examples of things that this would have been helpful for? Just
Sure. So in the case of the chiller unit, if that would have been worse or if we weren't able to purchase, a machine to handle that room for the time being for a couple week period, that would have been an emergency situation. There's a lot of money in that room. So I could see something like that, or if one of our AC units breaks down in the middle of summer and we need a new one or something like that. It wouldn't happen very often. This actually ties into the next ordinance regarding meeting cancellations, and that's kind of the other half of this is if we want to cancel a meeting, we can't because there's bills that need to be paid, but we need to get them approved, at least temporarily, until you guys can look at them. So it kind of goes hand in hand with Ordinance 2108. But again, it does help too, like I said, with an emergency situation that might come up. So I don't foresee it happening very often.
And I think I don't think it was appropriate when we had a town clerk, but now that we have a town administrator with broader authority and broader experience, I think it's useful and gives the town more flexibility in its operations. Everything comes to the town board eventually. It's just that chiller example was a good example.
No, it's a good example.
Well, I think payroll's a good example too.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
an
there
excellent
was a moment where, I mean, this board was close to being down to 3 people. I haven't read somebody was.
Change in the ordinance and giving the town administrator, again, with the town chair's knowledge, the ability to act.
And any purchase that would require a budget amendment, we wouldn't be able to do. So it'd only be something that we already have
Budgeted.
in the budget, yeah.
This seems to make a lot of sense, and with that example, it's better for us to do this now, and hopefully, in anticipation of, hopefully, nothing else happening.
Let's hope so.
May I just ask that, I noticed in these two, that we probably need to consistently use the term town chair in our,
Or chairperson, yeah.
and I kind of looked it up, and it says town chair is best used when there isn't a name behind it. But on the other hand, it's throughout the document, so I don't know if we want to, since we're changing.
I would say make it right while we're changing it.
Yeah.
Every time we change it, we'll make it right.
Would make it right.
Yeah.
Just say town chair rather than town chairman.
Oh, is it still referenced town chairman? I thought
No,
that was-
on and off
I
in
think
there,
I got it,
and and throughout the document,
Oh, under the attorneys.
and
Okay,
under
yep.
Well,
citizen
if we
comments
do that,
and-
we should do it through all
Right, yes,
ordinances.
right. Mhm.
I-
That's what I was,
That's
We'll
fine.
do a control replace or
Yeah.
control find replace, yep.
there we go.
And if we replace it in the other ordinances, I don't want to have to bring every single ordinance to
Right.
us for approval. We're just
Right.
going to replace the concept throughout all ordinances. Town chair.
And technically, chair is lowercase c, unless there's a name behind it, then it's uppercase c, but I guess we can decide on that.
Don't put my name behind it.
You want to vote before we lose power?
Motion to approve the ordinance granting limited expenditure contracting and contract execution authority to the town administrator, clerk treasurer, and the town chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proposed
Meetings?
Yeah, well, let's do the next one real
Yeah.
fast.
I'll motion to approve ordinance number 2021-08, an ordinance granting the town chairman of the board the authority to cancel a meeting of the town board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proposed ordinance change. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, motion passes. Do we want to cancel it or go on to the Town of Delafield Employee Handbook?
Well, the thing is, I'm not convinced any of us should be out there driving in this, so if we want to whip through this, I'm not thinking anybody should be leaving right now, but I guess that's personal opinion.
Oh, I don't, I'll do whatever we want. Let's keep
Sheltering
going.
in place and just having the meeting?
Yeah.
Doesn't look good.
Okay, then we'll bring up for discussion and possible action on the updates to the town's employee handbook. It was last updated, as Supervisor Kranik will remember, in 2016. And we're trying to update it 5 or so years, which I think is good. The major change in this was the change in the fire department, where they're no longer employees. Then there were some other changes in IT and some other policy changes. It's been through our employment attorney. Dan and I have spent considerable time on it. And I think it's good.
I say, I commend you for the time spent on this, because
Yeah.
it's obvious, wow. Great work.
Thanks.
I would suggest, did we change the updated from March to August? We've been working on it since March.
Yeah, it says August.
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
August.
It mentions in here the board liaisons for the departments, as a potential person for employees to speak to. Is that still happening?
No, and that, there was a couple of references to it, and I had thought I had taken them out, so
Okay.
I'll go through and remove that reference.
It's under the equal employment
Yep,
opportunity one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
It's in there, I want to say 2 or 3 times. I can get it to you.
Should we update town chairman to town chair in here too?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
good catch. Thanks, Tim. Any other comments on any changes?
Motion to approve the updates to the town of Delafield employee handbook, amended August 3rd, 2021, with the removal of any reference to board liaisons and updating the town chairman to town chair.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve, subject to 2 specific conditions in the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have an updated employee handbook. That's great. Thank you. Moving right along, announcements and planning. Town Board is Tuesday, August 24th, 2021 at 6:30. Plan Commission is Tuesday, September 7th at 6:30. The first budget workshop is Tuesday, September 14th at 5 p.m. And then there's a town board meeting on September 14th following the workshop.
So is that intended to start at 6:30?
It'll start as soon as we're done with the workshop,
Yeah,
so we don't have to wait.
if we finish early, it'll start early.
Okay.
If the workshop takes longer. We're pretty organized. We've been working on the budget already, so Howard's pretty pleased. We have unknowns in terms of the fire department and garbage collection. And we'll have the department heads come in and tell us what's going on. But it's working smooth, very smoothly, I would say.
Good.
Much due to Dan Green,
Thank you, Dan.
so. Any other comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Dan, you have something you want me to sign, or you want me to come in tomorrow?
You can come in
I
tomorrow.
didn't sign any thing.